Well, welcome back this week. Have you ever noticed while you're watching television news or reading the newspaper or that sort of thing that things seem out of place, they don't make sense, contradictory, on and on? Well, a number of things have come to mind recently about such incongruities and things that just don't make sense to me. For instance, the things that we did during Arab Spring to bring about democracy in the Middle East. And yet, what did it bring? It didn't bring democracy. As a matter of fact, in Egypt now, we're helping them with tanks and new F-16 fighter jets, the latest thing in the skies. And this is going to a government that's led by a militant Muslim Brotherhood guy. And we're giving them the weapons right across from Israel. And by the way, Libya, it is no longer a threat to Egypt. Syria is not going to be a threat to Egypt. Jordan isn't a threat to anybody. So on and so forth, but we're going to give Egypt these latest weapons. At the same time that our government is giving these weapons to the leader of Egypt, a militant Brotherhood guy, they are trying to do everything they can to limit the American people from ownership of certain guns, getting ammunition, clips for their guns, and that sort of thing. Doesn't that seem a little bit strange to you? We trust the Muslim Brotherhood, but we don't trust our own citizens. Another one is that they keep declaring victory wherever we send our armed forces into harm's way. And yet when we leave, the killings keep going on, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan or anywhere else. Killing people and blowing up people on a daily basis doesn't seem to be victory to me. It seems to be a new definition of the term and a waste of our armed forces and the price for which they paid for that victory. Another thing is that we continue to send aid money to Iraq. They in turn buy Russian arms. Now, does that seem to make sense to you? Another thing that we say is we want democracy, and that's what we're doing overseas. And yet our actions are leading, as I said earlier, to more militant Muslims being installed in these countries. But something that we've talked about before and continues is that when we go into these countries, what happens is that the Jews and Christians in those countries are in trouble. Here's the latest one from Pakistan. It says, mob sets fire to Christian enclave in Pakistan. They burnt down 150 homes and 2 churches. This is what happens when we start interfering in these areas, and they blame the local Christian population, whether it's the Coptics in Egypt, the Christians that were in Libya, the Christians in Syria, etc. They become a target because of our interference in all of these things. And then, as a result, into that vacuum just comes the militant Islamic leadership that looks an awful lot like communism to me. I don't care what label you put on it. If you look at the structure and the training and the weaponry that a lot of these people get, it comes from Beijing, comes from Moscow, and everything else. We've been trying to tell people that for a long time. You know, it's interesting that they say that they want democracy in these countries, but that's what the communists say too. As a matter of fact, I invite all of you to read the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, and you'll discover that's exactly what they said they want to produce, democracy. Yet we know the best form of government is a republic. That's what the Constitution of the United States established here. It is not a democracy. You will not find the word democracy in the Constitution, nor in any of the 50 state constitutions. And the Constitution of the United States mandates a republican system in all 50 states. And yet we see our leaders saying they want to have democracy both here and overseas, and somehow the communists say the same thing. I wonder who's telling the truth. So, at any rate, the thing is that we're seeing an awful lot of funny things going on. We had the recent Chuck Hagel's visit to Afghanistan, where there were some very controversial things said by the leader of Afghanistan about the things that are going on there, that American policy is actually helping the Taliban, and that the American forces are talking to the Taliban behind his back. Well, I don't know who's right and who's wrong in all of this. I'm not over there. I don't have an intelligence bureau. But I can tell you that I get a little nervous when I see Chuck Hagel going anywhere. Because Chuck Hagel, who is the new Minister of Defense, excuse me, I'm sorry, we don't call them ministers yet, the new Secretary of Defense in our country, he is the chairman of the Atlantic Council. Now, he probably has resigned that position now, but you can still go today probably on their website, the Atlantic Council, and determine that yes, he is. When you look at the material on the Atlantic Council's website, you will see, looking through it all, that their goal is to merge the United States, particularly North America, into the European Union. And that's our new Secretary of State. I wonder what he's going to be defending, us or the North American Union and the North American Alliance, etc. These people have an agenda, and it's time that you really see what's behind that agenda and what's really going on. Lastly, we found out in yesterday's New York Times that the share of homes with guns shows a 4-decade decline. Share of homes with guns shows a 4-decade decline. They took a poll, and they determined that 50% of the American people, the homes, had guns in them in 1970. But in 2012, only 34% of the homes had guns in them. Now, how did they determine that? Well, they took a poll. Well, I'm sure glad they didn't call me. Maybe they called you. And I'm sure that you said to them, oh yes, we have guns in the home. How many do you want to know about? You want to know their caliber, where I keep them? Of course not. As people become more suspicious of their government, they're less inclined to reveal such information. That is probably the reason for the decline, not whether homes do or do not have weapons in them. All you have to determine whether or not homes are rising or going down with gun ownership is just to stand outside of a major sports shop for any length of time, and you'll see the biggest crowd as at the gun section in those stores. You can't buy guns in some of these stores. You can't buy ammunition in some of these stores, not because it doesn't exist, but the demand is so high, they've run out of it. And it's like that all over the United States. So if, this is another indication that polls really don't matter. Not very many people are going to open up any more than they do with their doctor when their doctor is now mandated to ask, do you have a gun in your home? It's none of your business. Till next week, we'll see you then.